Hey guys, tonight we slip through the towering red gates of the Forbidden City, where you're not a noble or an emperor, but a lowly servant scraping by in the shadows of Ming and Qing dynasty opulence. Picture it, the air hums with the clatter of jade ornaments and the distant chime of bronze bells. But for you, it's the weight of a wooden yoke digging into your shoulders as you haul water buckets through courtyards bigger than your entire village. The Forbidden City, sprawling over 180 acres with 999 rooms, is a gilded cage where every step you take is watched, judged, and probably criticized. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this life without losing a piece of your soul or at least your patience. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not just anyone in this vast palace, you're a servant. One of thousands who keep this imperial machine running. The Forbidden City, built in the early 1400s under the Yongle Emperor, was designed as the cosmic center of the universe, a place where heaven and earth supposedly met. But for you, it's less divine harmony and more endless chores. You're up before dawn, your straw sandals already fraying as you shuffle across icy stone paths. Your job could be anything sweeping the hall of supreme harmony, polishing the emperor's dragon-embroidered robes, or scrubbing chamber pots for concubines who don't even know your name. The palace employs over 70,000 servants at its peak, from cooks to gardeners to lantern lighters, all bound by one truth: your life isn't yours. You're a cog in a machine that glorifies the emperor, and nobody cares if you're tired, cold, or dreaming of a day off. Let's talk hierarchy, because it's everything here. The Forbidden City is a labyrinth of power, and you're at the bottom. Above you are the emperor, his family, the concubines, the court officials, and let's not forget the eunuchs, who wield way more influence than you'd expect for guys who've, made certain sacrifices. You're not just serving the emperor, you're dodging the whims of everyone higher up. One wrong move, like spilling tea on a noble's silk robe, and you're facing a beating or worse. Historians still argue whether the servant class was more oppressed under the Ming or Qing dynasties, with some saying the Qing's Manchu rulers tightened the screws on discipline. Either way, your life's a gamble, and the house always wins. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants were tasked with catching crickets for the emperor's private collection, because apparently, cricket fighting was the imperial equivalent of binge-watching a Netflix series. You'd spend hours crawling through gardens, trying to nab a champion chirper, all while praying you didn't accidentally squash it. One wrong crunch, and you're out of a job, or worse, out of luck. The Forbidden City's beauty, with its golden roofs and vermilion walls, is a cruel contrast to your reality. You're surrounded by treasures you can't touch, rules you can't break, and a system that thrives on keeping you small. By the time you collapse onto your thin mat at night, you're already dreading the morning gong. This is your world now, and it's not exactly a fairy tale. But let's not get too cozy. Yet this is just the start. You've got a long day ahead, and the Forbidden City doesn't sleep, even if you desperately want to. Your next task is already looming, and it's not going to be fun. The palace's rhythm is relentless, and you're caught in its pulse, whether you like it or not. So, as you trudge toward your next chore, let's follow the path deeper into this glittering prison, where every corner holds a new way for life to, frankly, suck. You're barely awake, the pre-dawn chill biting your fingers as you stumble out of your cramped bunk in the Forbidden City's servant quarters. The sky's still dark, but the palace doesn't care. It's time to work. Your day starts with hauling water from a well half a mile away. Buckets sloshing against your shins as you weave through courtyards where the Emperor's dragons glare down from carved beams. You're a servant, and your life is a marathon of tasks that never end: sweeping, scrubbing, carrying, bowing. By the time the sun's up, you've already been at it for hours, and there's no coffee break in sight. The Forbidden City, home to emperors from the Ming dynasty's Yongle in the 1400s to the Qing's last ruler in 1912, runs on your sweat. Without you, those golden halls would crumble. But don't expect a thank you note. Your mornings often start in the outer courts, where you're sweeping stone paths or polishing railings until they gleam. The Forbidden City spans 180 acres, with nearly 10,000 rooms, so there's always a floor to scrub or a lantern to refill. If you're lucky or unlucky, depending on the mood, you might get assigned to the imperial kitchens. Sounds fancy. Right, wrong. You're not tasting the Emperor's dumplings. You're lugging firewood or scouring cauldrons big enough to bathe in. The kitchens churn out thousands of meals daily, and you're dodging steam burns while trying not to drop a tray. One clumsy move, and you're on the wrong side of a supervisor's bamboo rod. Historians still argue whether Ming servants had it worse than Qing ones, with some claiming the Qing's stricter oversight made every task feel like a tightrope walk. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants were stuck cleaning the Emperor's pet birds' cages, because apparently keeping 50 songbirds in perfect harmony was a priority. You'd spend hours scraping droppings while the birds chirped like they owned the place. Joke's on you if one escapes good luck explaining that to your boss. The work never stops, and neither do the rules. You can't sit, can't slouch, can't even yawn without risking a scolding. By noon, your back aches, your hands are raw, and you're dreaming of a nap that'll never come. Lunch, maybe a bowl of millet gruel if you're quick enough to grab it before the higher-ups take the good stuff. The worst part, you're always racing the clock. The palace runs on a rigid schedule: ceremonies, banquets, inspections, and you're the one making it all happen. If a lantern isn't lit by dusk or a robe isn't pressed for the Emperor's evening ritual, it's your head on the line. Not literally usually, but punishments are creative extra shifts, docked rations, or a public shaming that stings worse than a slap. And let's not talk about the time you accidentally tripped near a concubine's sedan chair. Yeps, that's a week of cleaning latrines. The Forbidden City's beauty is a cruel backdrop to your grind. Those red pillars and golden tiles, they're not for you to admire. They're just another surface to dust. As the day drags on, your legs feel like lead, but there's no slowing down. You're already thinking about the next task, maybe hauling coal for the braziers or fetching silk for a last-minute robe repair. The palace doesn't sleep, and neither do you. Not really. You're caught in a cycle of labor that's as relentless as the Emperor's demands. And speaking of demands, the eunuchs are starting to hover, their sharp eyes tracking your every move. That's a problem for later. But trust me, it's not going to be fun. You're scurrying through the Forbidden City's maze of courtyards, a tray of steaming tea balanced in your trembling hands, when you catch the cold stare of a eunuch gliding past in his silk robes. These guys aren't just servants with a unique job requirement. They're the puppet masters of the palace's underbelly. As a lowly servant, you're stuck navigating their web of power, where every word and gesture could either win you a rare favor or land you in hot water. Eunuchs, often numbering in the thousands during the Ming and Qing dynasties, were the emperor's trusted insiders, handling everything from his schedule to his secrets. But for you, they're a constant reminder that trust is a luxury you can't afford. One wrong step, and you're caught in their game of loyalty and betrayal. Your day is already packed, sweeping, hauling, bowing, but the eunuchs add a layer of dread. They control access to the emperor and his inner circle. So if you need extra rations or a lighter workload, you'd better stay on their good side. Problem is, Their good side is about as stable as a chopstick bridge in a storm. You might bribe one with a carefully hoarded rice cake, only to find out he's playing you against another servant for his own amusement. Historical records show eunuchs like Wei Zhongxian in the Ming dynasty wielded near absolute power, sometimes even outranking nobles. You're not dealing with Wei himself, but his modern equivalents are just as slippery. Historians still argue whether eunuchs were loyal servants or scheming opportunists, with some saying their influence destabilized entire dynasties. Here's a quirky tidbit: some eunuchs kept pet monkeys to entertain themselves. And guess who's cleaning up after those furry little tyrants? Yep, you, dodging bites while scrubbing their cages. It's almost funny until a monkey steals your lunch and you're left with nothing but a scolding. The eunuch's power comes from their proximity to the emperor, but they're not above petty grudges. You once saw a servant reassigned to latrine duty for weeks just for looking at a eunuch the wrong way. Your strategy: keep your head down, your mouth shut, and your tea tray steady. But that's easier said than done when they're always watching, their whispers carrying more weight than your entire existence. The worst part is the mind games. A eunuch might smile and ask about your family, but it's not chit-chat, it's a test. You mumble something vague, knowing a too honest answer could be twisted against you. They trade in secrets, and you're just a pawn in their schemes. Maybe you overhear a snippet of court gossip while polishing a bronze incense burner. Say, a concubine's complaint about her rival. If you pass it to the right eunuch, you might get a nod of approval. But if it backfires, you're scrubbing floors until your hands bleed. And let's not forget the time you accidentally bumped a eunuch's sedan chair. Yep, that's a month of carrying double loads. The Forbidden City's hierarchy is a tightrope, and the eunuchs hold the rope as you hustle to deliver that tea before it cools. You're already bracing for the next encounter. The eunuch's influence seeps into every corner of the palace, and you're never quite sure who's pulling the strings. Your life's a balancing act, and the stakes are higher than ever. Those gleaming halls you pass through, they're not your home, they're a battlefield, and you're just trying to survive the day. You're dragging your aching feet across the Forbidden City's stone paths, the golden roofs of the palaces glinting under the moonlight as you head to your so-called bed. After a day of scrubbing, hauling, and dodging eunuchs, you're dreaming of rest, but the reality of your sleeping quarters slaps you awake. Forget silk-draped beds or cozy fires. The servant dorms are a far cry from the emperor's lavish chambers. You're packed into a cramped, drafty room with dozens of others, your thin straw mat barely cushioning the cold floor. The Forbidden City, built in the 1400s to house emperors and their courts, boasts 999 rooms. But for you, home is a corner of a shed-like barrack that smells like sweat and despair. This is where luxury goes to die. Your dorm is tucked in the palace's outer edges, far from the ornate halls you clean daily. The walls are flimsy wood, letting in every gust of Beijing's biting winter wind. Blankets. You've got one, threadbare and shared with fleas. In summer, its worse stifling heat turns the room into a human stew. And mosquitoes treat you like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Historical records from the Qing dynasty note that servants often slept in shifts due to overcrowding, with some dorms housing up to 50 people in spaces meant for 20. You're lucky if you get 4 hours of sleep before the morning gong yanks you back to work. Historians still argue whether Ming servants had better living conditions than Qing ones, with some claiming the Ming's earlier prosperity meant slightly thicker mats, big whoop. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants used to stuff their mats with dried orange peels to mask the dorm's musty stench, only to wake up covered in ants. You tried it once, and let's just say you're still itching from the memory. The joke's on you when you realize even the emperor's pet peacocks probably sleep more comfortably than you do. Your dorm's so cramped you can hear every snore, cough, and whispered complaint from your bunkmates. Privacy, forget it. You're elbow to elbow, trying not to roll into someone's sweaty armpit. And don't even get started on that one time you accidentally kicked over a chamber pot in the dark. That earned you a week of glares from everyone. The contrast stings every time you trudge past the Emperor's quarters, where silk curtains flutter and braziers glow. You're surrounded by opulence but can't touch it. Your mat's so thin you wake up feeling like you've been trampled by a water buffalo. And the cold, they're relentless. You've learned to sleep curled up, your breath fogging in the air, praying you don't wake up with frost on your eyelashes. The palace doesn't care about your comfort. It's built to glorify the Emperor, not to coddle you. You're just a tool, like the brooms you push or the buckets you carry. As you collapse onto your mat, the snores of your bunkmates already rising, you're too tired to dream of anything but a few hours of peace. But even that's a gamble. Rats might nibble your toes, or a supervisor might barge in with a last-minute task. The Forbidden City's beauty is a cruel mirage, and your dorm is the gritty truth behind it. You're already dreading the morning, when you'll drag yourself back to those gleaming halls that feel like another world. You're hunched over in the Forbidden City's dim servant mess hall, clutching a chipped bowl of millet gruel that's more water than grain. Your stomach's been growling for hours, but this is dinner, hardly the feast you'd expect in a palace dripping with gold. As a servant, you're surrounded by the Emperor's extravagance, but your meals are scraps, often leftovers from the imperial table if you're lucky. The Forbidden City's kitchens, churning out thousands of dishes daily for emperors and nobles from the Ming Dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's early 1900s, are a well-oiled machine, but you're not savoring the fruits of their labor. You're just trying to fill the gnawing hole in your gut without getting sick from spoiled rice. This isn't fine dining, it's survival. The mess hall is a cramped, smoky room tucked behind the kitchens where you and dozens of other servants shovel food down before your next shift. The Emperor's banquets might feature 108 dishes, roast duck, lotus root soup, delicate pastries, but you're getting the dregs wilted vegetables, chewy meat scraps, or day-old buns that could double as doorstops. Historical records show that during the Qing dynasty, the imperial kitchens employed over 2,000 staff, but servants like you were rationed strictly, sometimes surviving on less than 1,000 calories a day. You're always hungry, and stealing a bite from the Emperor's tray. That's a one-way ticket to a beating or worse. Historians still argue whether food rations improved under the Qing's later reforms, with some saying Manchu rulers prioritized nobles over servants. Shocking. I know. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants swore by chewing on licorice twigs to trick their stomachs into feeling full. But all you got was a splinter in your gums and a weird aftertaste. You'd laugh if you weren't so tired of gnawing on gristle. The joke's on you when you see the Emperor's pet dogs fed better actual meat, not mystery broth. Meal times are a race, too. You've got minutes to eat before a supervisor barks you back to work. Spill your gruel, tough luck. There's no second helping. And don't even think about that time you tried to sneak an extra bun. Yep. You spent a week scrubbing pots for that stunt. The worst part is the monotony. Day after day. It's gruel, rice, maybe a sad cabbage leaf if the cooks are feeling generous. Fresh fruit. That's for concubines. Not you. You're so used to bland food that a stray peppercorn feels like a flavor explosion. But it's not just hunger, it's the humiliation. You're slaving in a palace where every meal for the elite is a spectacle, yet you're scraping mold off your bread. The kitchen's aromas taunt you as you haul firewood past steaming woks, knowing none of that deliciousness is yours. And if the Emperor's in a bad mood, rations get cut, because apparently you're the problem. As you choke down the last watery spoonful, you're already bracing for the night shift, maybe polishing silver or fetching water. The Forbidden City's opulence is a cruel backdrop to your hunger pangs. You're surrounded by wealth, but eating like a beggar. Your bowl's empty, your stomach's still rumbling, and the palace doesn't care. It's just another day in this glittering prison, and you're already dreaming of a meal that doesn't taste like defeat. You're tiptoeing through the Forbidden City's sprawling courtyards, heart pounding as you carry a stack of freshly pressed robes, praying you don't trip over a cobblestone and ruin them. Every step feels like a test, because the palace runs on rules so strict they might as well be carved into the walls. As a servant, you're bound by a web of protocols that govern everything: how you walk, talk, even breathe in the presence of anyone higher up. One misstep, like forgetting to bow low enough or speaking out of turn, could mean a lashing, a demotion to latrine duty, or worse. The Forbidden City, the heart of imperial China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's fall in 1912, is a machine of order. And you're just a tiny, replaceable gear trying not to get crushed. These rules aren't just suggestions, they're your survival manual. You've memorized the proper angle for bowing to a concubine 45 degrees. No less, the exact distance to stand from a noble 3 steps. Always, and the forbidden words you can't utter. Like the emperor's name. Historical records from the Qing dynasty detail over 1,000 palace regulations, with punishments ranging from fines to exile for infractions. You're not just dodging mistakes, you're dodging disaster. Historians still argue whether these rules were stricter under the Ming, with their rigid Confucian ideals, or the Qing, who layered Manchu traditions on top. Either way, you're caught in a system where perfection is the bare minimum. And the emperor's mood swings decide your fate. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants were punished for sneezing too loudly near a sacred altar, because apparently your allergies could offend the heavens. You tried stifling a sneeze once, and let's just say your face looked like a startled carp. Good for a laugh, until the supervisor's glare shut you up. The joke's on you when you realize even your shadow can't fall on the wrong pavement without someone noticing. Every task comes with a rule book: fold the emperor's robes in precise thirds, light incense in the exact order, and never, ever look directly at royalty. That one time you accidentally glanced at a passing prince. Yeah, you spent a week carrying coal as penance. The fear is constant, like a low hum in your chest. You're always second-guessing. Did you bow long enough? Did you speak too loudly? The palace is a maze of invisible lines you can't cross. Even eating has rules: no lingering in the mess hall, no taking food back to your dorm. Break one, and you're facing a supervisor's wrath, or worse, a eunuch's scheming revenge. Remember those guys. The rules are meant to keep the palace running smoothly, but they also keep you small, invisible, and terrified. You're not a person here, you're a function, and the Forbidden City doesn't forgive errors. As you deliver those robes, sweat beating despite the chilly air, you're already bracing for the next task, each one a new chance to mess up. The palace's golden roofs and dragon carvings loom over you, a reminder of the power you serve. You're trapped in a world where every move is watched, every mistake is costly, and freedom is just a word you've forgotten. The day's not over, and neither is the pressure. Those rules are your shadow, and they're not going anywhere. You're slipping through the Forbidden City's shadowed corridors, a broom in your calloused hands, sweeping dust from the base of a jade statue while trying to blend into the background. As a servant, you're supposed to be invisible, a ghost who keeps the palace gleaming without ever being noticed. But here's the kicker: even though you're meant to fade into the woodwork, someone's always watching. Spies, supervisors, even other servants are ready to snitch if you slack off or step out of line. The Forbidden City, the imperial heart of China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's collapse in 1912, is a place where secrecy and surveillance are as common as the incense smoke curling through the air. You're never truly alone, and that's a problem when you're just trying to survive another day. Your job demands you melt into the scenery, Whether you're polishing the emperor's throne in the Hall of Supreme Harmony or scrubbing tiles in a concubine's courtyard, you're trained to move silently, head down, eyes averted. The Qing dynasty's court records show that servants were explicitly instructed to act as if unseen, with over 70,000 of you scurrying around at the palace's peak. But the irony stings while you're meant to be a shadow. The palace's network of informants keeps you under a microscope. Eunuchs, those scheming powerhouses you're already wary of, often double as spies, reporting any gossip or misstep to their superiors. Historians still argue whether this surveillance was more intense under the Ming, with their Confucian obsession with order, or the Qing, who added Manchu paranoia to the mix. Either way, you're caught in a panopticon of suspicion. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants were so paranoid about being watched that they'd whisper to each other in code, using nonsense words to confuse eavesdroppers. You tried it once, muttering Lotus Moon to a friend about stealing an extra bun, only to realize a supervisor was right behind you cue a week of hauling firewood. The joke's on you when you think you've got a moment of privacy, only to find a eunuch's pet parrot squawking your secrets. Speaking of bad days, there was that time you accidentally knocked over a lantern while cleaning Nothing Broke, but the glare from a passing official made you wish you could vanish into the floorboards. The constant scrutiny makes every task a tightrope walk. You're sweeping, but you're also listening for footsteps, scanning for eyes in the shadows. A fellow servant might rat you out for pausing too long to catch your breath, hoping to curry favor with a eunuch. Trust is a rare commodity here, and betrayal is just another Tuesday. You've learned to keep your thoughts locked tight, because even a grumbled complaint about the cold could reach the wrong ears. The palace's beauty, those crimson pillars and golden dragons, feels like a trap, a glittering facade hiding the eyes that never stop watching. You're invisible, but you're also exposed, and that contradiction gnaws at you. As you finish sweeping and move to your next task, probably lugging water again, you feel the weight of unseen gazes on your back. The Forbidden City's rules and spies keep you in check, ensuring you stay small, silent, and scared. You're just trying to get through the day without a snitch turning your life upside down. But in this palace, even the walls have ears. You're hunched over a flickering oil lamp in the Forbidden City's servant quarters, mending a torn robe with clumsy stitches, your eyes stinging from exhaustion. The palace is quiet now, but your mind's buzzing with a dangerous thought. What if you could escape this life? As a servant, you're trapped in a world of endless toil, bound by walls both physical and invisible. The Forbidden City, the imperial stronghold of China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's end in 1912, is a fortress designed to keep you in as much as it keeps intruders out. Its towering red gates and 180-acre sprawl are your prison, and the dream of freedom is a whisper you barely dare to entertain. But oh, you think about it until reality slaps you back down. Escape isn't just hard, it's a fantasy wrapped in razor wire. The palace's walls are 9 feet thick, patrolled by guards who'd rather skewer you than ask questions. Even if you slipped past them, where would you go? Your family's back in some distant village, and showing up without permission could get them punished or worse. Historical records from the Qing dynasty show that runaway servants faced brutal consequences, from public flogging to execution, with their families often dragged into the mess. You're not just risking your neck, you're gambling everyone you love. Historians still argue whether more servants fled during the Ming's economic booms or the Qing's later instability. But the math doesn't lie. Most who tried didn't make it far. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some desperate servants hid messages in the emperor's laundry, hoping outsiders would find them and help. You tried scratching Save Me into a robe's hem once, but a eunuch caught you. Yep, that's how you ended up scrubbing latrines for a month. The joke's on you when you realize even your daydreams come with a price tag. Like that time you stared too long at the open gate during a supply delivery, earning a supervisor's suspicious glare. Freedom taunts you every time you glimpse the world beyond the walls, merchants haggling, kids laughing, life moving on without you. But you're stuck, a ghost in a gilded cage. The palace's system is built to crush your hopes. You're fed just enough to work, paid in scraps if at all, and watched so closely you can't even steal a nap without risking a beating. Remember those spies? Leaving legally. That's a pipe dream. Servants were often bound for life, especially if you were born into it or sold to settle a debt. Some whisper about buying their freedom, but the cost is more than you'll earn in a lifetime. You've seen older servants, their backs bent from decades of labor, still shuffling through the same courtyards. That's your future, and it's a gut punch every time you think about it, as you finish stitching and blow out the lamp. The darkness feels heavier than usual. You lie on your thin mat, the snores of your bunkmates a grim lullaby, and let the dream of escape flicker one last time before sleep takes you. The Forbidden City's walls aren't just stone, they're the weight of a system that owns you. Tomorrow, you'll wake to the same grind, the same rules, and the same fading hope. Freedom's a cruel mirage, and you're too tired to chase it anymore. You're standing in the Forbidden City's vast courtyard, legs aching, as you hold a tray of ceremonial incense for what feels like the 100th hour of an imperial ritual. The air is thick with the scent of sandalwood and the drone of chanting monks. But all you can think about is how your feet are screaming for a break. As a servant, you're dragged into the palace's endless ceremonies, coronations, ancestor worship, seasonal rites that keep the emperor's divine status polished. From the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's twilight in 1912, these rituals were the heartbeat of the Forbidden City. And you're the one making sure every candle, robe, and offering is perfect. But perfection comes at a cost. You're exhausted, and there's no sitting down allowed. These ceremonies are a spectacle. Think golden altars, silk banners, and the emperor in dragon robes so heavy they'd crush you. Your job might be holding a jade cup for hours, arranging flowers for an altar, or standing frozen as a statue while nobles drone on about cosmic harmony. Historical records from the Qing dynasty describe rituals lasting up to 12 hours, with servants often collapsing from fatigue. You're not allowed to sway, fidget, or heaven forbid sneeze. Remember that sneezing rule. One wobble, and you're facing a supervisor's wrath, or worse, a demotion to cleaning the emperor's pet tiger's cage. Historians still argue whether Ming rituals were more grueling due to their Confucian rigor or if Qing ceremonies dragged longer with Manchu flair. Either way, your body's begging for mercy. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants were tasked with catching fireflies for nighttime rituals, because apparently glowing bugs added divine ambiance. You spent one sweaty evening chasing those flickering pests, only to drop the jar and earn a week of extra shifts. Classic. The joke's on you when you realize the emperor's sipping tea while you're playing human statue. Like that time you stood so long your legs went numb and you nearly tipped into a bronze incense burner. Good thing nobody noticed, or you'd be scrubbing floors till next spring. These rituals aren't just tiring, they're a reminder of your place. You're a prop, not a person, in this cosmic theater. The worst part is the mental toll. You're not just standing there, you're hyper-aware of every rule, every watching eye, those spies again. Drop a tray, that's a scandal. Yawn during a prayer, you're disrespecting the heavens. Your back's screaming, your stomach's growling that millet gruel from earlier isn't cutting it, and you're praying the emperor doesn't decide to extend the ceremony. The palace's beauty, those crimson pillars and jade statues, feels like a cruel joke when you're too tired to care. You're not here to marvel, you're here to endure. And when one ritual ends, another's already looming. Because the Forbidden City never runs out of ways to glorify the emperor. As the chanting finally fades and you're dismissed, your legs wobble like noodles. But there's no rest, yet someone's already barking about prepping for tomorrow's sunrise rite. You shuffle back to your dorm, the weight of exhaustion pulling you down. The Forbidden City's rituals are a dazzling display of power. But for you, they're just another way life here grinds you into the dust. You're crammed into the Forbidden City's servant dorm, the air thick with the coughs and wheezes of your bunkmates. As you try to ignore the itch of a fresh flea bite, sickness is a constant shadow here, creeping through the overcrowded quarters where you sleep shoulder to shoulder on thin mats. As a servant, you're surrounded by the palace's grandeur golden roofs, jade statues, but when disease strikes, there's no imperial physician rushing to your side. The Forbidden City, ruling China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's end in 1912, is a marvel of architecture. But its servant quarters are a breeding ground for illness, and you're just trying not to be the next one hacking up a lung. These dorms are a petri dish of misery, with up to 50 servants packed into spaces meant for half that. Every sneeze spreads like wildfire. Historical records from the Qing dynasty note frequent outbreaks of smallpox, dysentery, and respiratory infections among palace staff, with little access to medicine. You're lucky if you get a bitter herbal tea from a kitchen scraps. Proper care is reserved for nobles. A fever means you're still expected to work sweep those floors. Carry that water because the palace doesn't stop for your sniffles. Historians still argue whether Ming servants fared better due to earlier prosperity or if Qing overcrowding made epidemics worse. Either way, you're one cough away from a bad week or worse. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants burned garlic peels to ward off disease, filling the dorm with a stench so bad it almost made you miss the fleas. You tried it once, and let's just say your bunkmates weren't thrilled to a week of them accidentally stepping on your mat. The joke's on you when you realize the Emperor's pet birds probably get better treatment than you do. Like that time you caught a cold and still had to stand through a 10-hour ritual, shivering so hard you nearly dropped a ceremonial tray. Good thing the eunuch was too busy scheming to notice. The lack of care stings as much as the illness. If you're too sick to work, you're a burden, and supervisors don't hesitate to dock your rations or assign you worse tasks once you're better. Clean water, rare. Sanitation, a dream. The latrines are a nightmare, and washing your hands is a luxury when you're hauling buckets all day. You've seen friends waste away, their coughs turning wet and ragged, with nothing but a pat on the back and a get back to work. The palace's beauty, those vermilion walls you pass daily, feels like a cruel lie when you're spitting blood into a rag. You're expendable. And the Forbidden City doesn't mourn its cogs as you curl up on your mat, trying to ignore the fever creeping up your neck. You're already dreading tomorrow's tasks. Sickness isn't an excuse here, it's just another weight to carry. The palace's relentless rhythm keeps grinding, and you're forced to keep up, whether your body agrees or not. Those glittering halls you serve, they're a world away from the damp, sickly reality you're living in. You're scrambling through the Forbidden City's labyrinthine halls, sweat beading on your forehead as you clutch a jade teapot meant for the Emperor himself. A eunuch just barked that His Majesty wants tea now and not the usual blend, but some rare leaf from a mountain you've never heard of. As a servant, you're at the mercy of the Emperor's whims, sudden demands that turn your already grueling day into a high-stakes obstacle course. The Forbidden City, the imperial nerve center of China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's fall in 1912, revolves around the Emperor's every mood. And you're the one racing to keep up. One wrong move, and you're not just spilling tea, you're risking everything. The Emperor's whims are as unpredictable as a summer storm. One day, he's demanding a midnight banquet with 50 dishes. The next, he wants every lantern in the palace swapped for blue silk shades because red feels unlucky. Historical records from the Qing dynasty describe emperors like Qianlong ordering impromptu poetry contests or hunts, pulling hundreds of servants into chaos with zero notice. You're not just fetching tea, you're dodging other frantic servants, navigating eunuchs who'd love to pin any delay on you, and praying the teapot doesn't crack. Historians still argue whether Ming emperors were more capricious, or if Qing rulers' Manchu traditions added extra layers of ceremony and stress for servants like you. Either way, your heart's pounding every time a new order comes down. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some emperors, like Wanli of the Ming, were obsessed with collecting rare turtles. So you once spent hours chasing an escaped one through a courtyard, only to get nipped. Yep, that's a week of Snickers from your bunkmates. The joke's on you when the emperor changes his mind mid-task, like when you hauled a dozen peony vases across the palace, only to hear he wanted lotuses instead. Remember that time you rushed to polish a throne for an unscheduled audience, only for the emperor to nap through it? You're still sore from lugging those cushions for nothing. The pressure's relentless. You're not just fulfilling orders. You're performing under the gaze of a system that punishes failure harshly. Spill that tea. You're facing a beating or worse. A eunuch's grudge those guys again. The emperor doesn't even know you exist. But his whims shape your every move. You're weaving through courtyards, past dragon carvings that seem to mock your panic, trying to recall which storeroom holds that rare tea. The palace's beauty, those golden roofs catching the sun, feels like a taunt when you're too stressed to breathe. And the clock's ticking, because His Majesty waits for no one, as the eunuch so kindly reminded you. As you finally deliver the tea, hands shaking, you're already bracing for the next demand, maybe a new robe or a last-minute ritual. The Forbidden City's rhythm is dictated by the Emperor's caprice, and you're just a speck caught in its whirlwind. You're exhausted, but there's no pause button here. Those gleaming halls you rush through, they're a stage for imperial power, and you're just trying to survive the script. You're crouched in a dim corner of the Forbidden City's kitchens, polishing a stack of silver chopsticks while stealing a quick whisper with another servant about a concubine's latest tantrum. Gossip is your only currency here, a risky but tempting way to gain an edge in this cutthroat palace. As a servant, you're stuck in a world of endless chores and watchful eyes. But whispers about nobles, eunuchs, or even the emperor himself are your one shot at influence or disaster. The Forbidden City, ruling China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's end in 1912, thrives on secrets, and you're learning fast that a juicy rumor can be worth more than a week's rations. But one loose word, and you're sunk. Trading gossip is a high-stakes game. Maybe you overheard a noble complaining about the emperor's new advisor while you were scrubbing a courtyard. Pass that to the right eunuch, and you might score extra gruel or a lighter shift. But pick the wrong ear, and you're facing a supervisor's bamboo rod or worse, a one-way trip to exile. Historical records from the Qing dynasty show that palace gossip could spark political plots, with servants sometimes used as pawns in schemes they barely understood. You're not just swapping stories, you're navigating a minefield. Historians still argue whether gossip was more dangerous under the Ming's rigid hierarchy or the Qing's faction-heavy court. But for you, every whisper feels like a roll of the dice. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants invented fake rumors about haunted palace corners to scare off nosy supervisors, until one backfired. And you spent a night guarding a cursed gate for laughs. The joke's on you when you realize your bunkmate sold your last bit of gossip for a meat bun, leaving you with nothing but a scolding. Like that time you let slip a noble's complaint about the emperor's poetry, only to find it traced back to you. Yep, you hauled coal for a month. Gossip's your only power, but it's a double-edged sword. You're always weighing who to trust, what to say, and whether that tidbit about a concubine's secret lover is worth the risk. The palace's atmosphere feeds this game. You're invisible, sweeping floors or carrying trays. So nobles often talk freely around you, dropping scraps of intrigue you can't unhear. But you're also watched those spies again, and a careless word can land you in trouble faster than you can say imperial decree. You've learned to whisper in code, maybe mentioning red flowers for a scandal, but even that's not foolproof. The Forbidden City's glittering halls, those dragon-carved pillars you pass daily, are a stage for secrets, and you're both player and pawn. Every conversation is a gamble, and you're not exactly holding a winning hand. As you finish polishing and slip back to your tasks, you catch another servant's eye, signaling a hushed meetup later. Gossip might be your only leverage. But it's a dangerous game in a palace where walls have ears and loyalty is a myth. You're just trying to survive, but one wrong whisper could cost you everything. You're hobbling through the Forbidden City's chilly courtyards, your back stooped from years of hauling buckets and scrubbing floors, your hands gnarled like old tree roots. As a servant, you've spent decades in this glittering prison, but there's no gold watch or cozy retirement waiting. The palace, the heart of imperial China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's collapse in 1912, doesn't reward its workers, it just uses them up. You're aging fast, your body creaking under the weight of endless labor, with no pension, no freedom, and no way out. The dream of a life beyond these walls, remember those escape fantasies, is long gone, replaced by the grim reality that you'll likely die here, still sweeping someone else's floors. The Forbidden City chews through servants like you. You've seen it, friends who started alongside you, now gray and frail, still lugging firewood or bowing to nobles half their age. Historical records from the Qing dynasty show that servants often worked until they physically couldn't, with no formal system for retirement or release. Some were allowed to leave in old age, but only if they had a replacement, usually a relative forced into the same trap. You've got no one to pass this burden to, so you're stuck, your joints aching as you trudge through tasks you could once do in your sleep. Historians still argue whether Ming servants had a slightly better shot at release due to looser regulations, or if Qing bureaucracy locked everyone in tighter. Either way, your future looks like more of the same, minus the energy. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some old servants claimed rubbing sesame oil on their knees kept them limping along, but all you got was a greasy robe and a supervisor's scowl for wasting resources. The joke's on you when you realize the Emperor's pet dogs get pampered into old age while you're lucky to get a day off. Like that time you collapsed carrying a coal basket, only to be told to walk it off or lose your ration's classic palace compassion. Your body's breaking down, but the palace doesn't care. You're still expected to kneel perfectly, carry heavy loads, and keep up with younger servants who eye your spot like vultures. The worst part is the invisibility. Nobles and eunuchs barely notice you now, except to bark orders. Your years of service mean nothing, no promotions, no rewards, just more work. The palace's beauty, those golden roofs you've polished for decades, feels like a taunt, a reminder of the life you'll never have. You've heard whispers of servants who saved enough to bribe their way out, but your meager rations barely cover survival, let alone a bribe. And illness. It's a death sentence. That cough you've had for weeks, remember the dorm's sickly air isn't getting better, and there's no doctor coming. You're expendable, and the Forbidden City's got no use for a worn-out cog. As you shuffle to your next task, the weight of years presses harder than any bucket. The palace's endless rhythm grinds on, and you're fading into its shadows. Just another old servant with nothing to show for a lifetime of labor. Those gleaming halls you've served your whole life, they'll outlast you, and no one will remember your name. You're sweeping a quiet corner of the Forbidden City's outer courtyard, the broom's rhythm lulling your tired mind, when you overhear a hushed argument between two servants about refusing an extra shift. The word rebellion hangs in the air like smoke, and your stomach twists. As a servant, you're crushed under the palace's relentless rules, but whispers of defiance, small acts of resistance, or even dreams of uprising are a dangerous spark. The Forbidden City, The iron grip of imperial China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's fall in 1912 doesn't tolerate dissent. And any hint of rebellion could light a fuse that burns you all. You're tempted to join the whisper, but you know the cost defiance here is a death wish. Rebellion isn't new, but it's rare and always bloody. You've heard stories servants who sabotaged tasks, hid supplies, or even plotted against eunuchs. Historical records from the Qing dynasty mention small servant revolts, often crushed before they could spread, with leaders executed publicly to scare the rest of you straight. The palace's system, those spies, those rules, remember them, is built to snuff out trouble fast. You might skip a chore or lose a noble's robe, but anything bigger, like refusing orders en masse, brings guards, chains, or worse. Historians still argue whether Ming servants were bolder due to economic unrest or if Qing crackdowns made resistance rarer. Either way, you're walking a razor's edge just listening to these whispers. Here's a quirky tidbit: some servants once swapped salt for sugar in a eunuch's tea as a prank, calling it sweet revenge until they were caught. And you spent a week scrubbing floors to avoid guilt by association. The joke's on you when you think a tiny act of defiance won't backfire. Like that time you forgot to polish a lantern and earned extra night shifts. You're exhausted, hungry, and old before your time. That aching back still stings. So the idea of pushing back feels good until you picture the consequences. A friend who once refused to bow to a cruel supervisor vanished, and nobody talks about him anymore. That's the palace's message: resist, and you're erased. The danger's in the air now, crackling like a storm. You hear more whispers, servants grumbling about rations, others plotting to slack off during a ritual. But you know the spies are listening. Those eyes never sleep, and eunuchs love an excuse to flex their power. Joining in could feel like a spark of control, but snitching might buy you a favor or at least safety. You hate yourself for even thinking it. But survival's a dirty game here. The palace's beauty, those dragon carvings glowing under torchlight, mocks your trapped life. You're not a rebel, you're just a tired servant, broom in hand, trying to stay alive. But the word rebellion lingers, and it's hard to shake. As you finish sweeping and shuffle toward your dorm, the whispers fade, but the tension doesn't. The Forbidden City's walls feel tighter tonight, its rules heavier. You're caught between fear and frustration, knowing defiance is a flame that could warm you or burn you to ash. Those gleaming halls you've served forever, they're a cage, and you're not sure if you're brave or desperate enough to rattle the bars. You're trudging through the Forbidden City's fading twilight, a worn broom dragging behind you, as the weight of your life here settles like dust on your shoulders. You've spent years, maybe decades, serving this palace, your hands scarred from labor, your dreams eroded by rules and exhaustion. As a servant, you're a fleeting shadow in the grand tapestry of the Forbidden City, the imperial heart of China from the Ming dynasty's 1400s to the Qing's end in 1912. Your work keeps the palace alive, but when you're gone, no one will carve your name into these crimson walls. You're fading into history, just another forgotten soul who kept the emperor's world spinning. This is the end of your story, and it's as quiet as the empty courtyards you sweep. Your life's work is invisible. You've polished thrones, hauled water, and stood through rituals those aching legs still complain. But the palace's records won't mention you. Historical accounts from the Qing dynasty list emperors and eunuchs, not the thousands of servants who scrubbed their floors. You're one of 70,000 at the palace's peak. A number, not a name. Your bunkmates, your whispered gossip, remember that risky game. Your small rebellions, they'll vanish too. Historians still argue whether servants' lives mattered more to the Ming's Confucian ideals or the Qing's bureaucratic machine. But to you, it's simple. You gave everything and got nothing back. The palace's golden roofs, gleaming under the stars. Feel like a final taunt, a world you served but never belonged to. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants left tiny marks, scratched initials or doodles on hidden beams, hoping to leave a trace. You carved a crooked lotus under a staircase once, but a supervisor caught you. Yep, that's how you ended up cleaning latrines for a month. The joke's on you when you realize even your rebellion's erased. Like that time you tried to lose a noble's robe and got extra shifts instead. You're old now. Your cough worsening, that dorm air's no friend. And the palace doesn't care. You'll work until you can't, then fade away, replaced by another desperate soul. The Forbidden City's beauty, those dragon carvings you've dusted forever, is eternal. But you're not. As you lean against a pillar, catching your breath, you feel the palace's pulse slowing around you, the rituals, the whims, the spies they'll go on, but you're slipping from their grip. Your life's been a grind of millet gruel, freezing mats, and endless rules. But it's yours, and you've carried it this far. The stars above the courtyard wink, indifferent, as you shuffle toward your dorm one last time. The Forbidden City's story will outlive you, its walls standing long after your broom falls still. You're just a whisper in its history. But tonight, that's enough. The air grows softer now, the palace's sharp edges blurring as you sink into your mat. The snores of your bunkmates a gentle hum. Let the golden roofs and dragon carvings fade, their weight lifting from your tired shoulders. You've carried enough for one lifetime. Buckets, trays, rules, dreams. The courtyard's quiet, the stars dimming, and you're drifting, lighter than you've ever been. Feel your breath slow, each exhale pulling you deeper into a place where no gong wakes you, no eunuch barks. The Forbidden City's walls can't hold you here. You're slipping past them into a vast, warm stillness where your story rests, unwritten but complete. Sleep now, soft and deep, cradled by the night's endless calm.